Hello and welcome to VAX Talk. This is the podcast for people who would be perfectly happy if InfoWars were kicked off of YouTube. My name is Karen Ernst. I am the Executive Director of Voices for Vaccines.
And I'm Nathan Boonstra. I am a general pediatrician here in Des Moines, Iowa at Blank Children's Hospital.
And we've got a pretty good episode planned today. Now we are joined by Natalie Newell and Dr. Chad Hayes, both from the Parenthetical Science podcast. Natalie also has some pretty great science chops as the writer and producer of the Science Moms film. And Chad Hayes is a pediatrician, and he also has a wonderful blog whose name just escaped my brain.
I called it Demystifying Pediatrics. Demystifying
Pediatrics. Thank you very much for joining us, Natalie and Chad.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Yes, absolutely. And so I want to start with Chad for a moment, because you went on was it a month or two ago, you went to a conference that must have been very educational about integrative medicine. And I'm wondering if you could just tell us what you've added to your pediatric practice from that particular experience.
Yeah, so I learned a lot there. The conference was down in Orlando. I think it was in November, and it was called Get Your Life Back Now. It was the movers and shakers of the integrative medicine movement, and there were luminaries there like Andrew Wakefield and Joseph Mercola, and Joseph Mercola's wife, I forgot her name, but she runs Health Nut News, which
Erin
yeah. Yes. She runs a medical journal called Health Nut News. And I learned so many things there about the different one true causes of diseases and the ways that you can cure autism with lasers and homeopathy, and the fact that root canals are pretty much the cause of every disease. And so I haven't really changed my practice a lot, but I did implement Joseph Mercola's recommendations to protect myself. And so now every day when I come home from work, I shut off all the electrical breakers and turn off the Wi-Fi and put my phone in airplane mode. And then I crawl into my silver mesh sleeping bag to prevent the EMF from causing cancer.
And you're still alive, so there you go.
When kids actually do get vaccine-preventable illnesses and suffer greatly or die from them, the parents realize that they probably could have made a different decision that might have helped. But I think before they had that experience, it just feels different.
And has it been more different now we're like exactly 20 years since Andrew Wakefield, right? Kind of entered the scene with his...
20 years ago yesterday.
Right, okay, yeah, yesterday. I remember seeing an article and I sent it to Chad. But is it before then? Because I'm 34, and my mom's a nurse, so I don't think she was ever questioning whether or not to vaccinate me. But was it different before the Wakefield stuff happened, and now people still are pointing to that whole anti-vaccine movement that he started with their fears?
It was absolutely different. I mean, there were times in our history where people would stand in lines for vaccines. And so with specific regard to vaccines, this is a relatively new thing in the past 20 years or so. But I think the attitude has always been out there that people don't trust some authority figure or don't trust things they don't understand.
There was the kind of history of the DTP vaccine, the original wholesale vaccine that was going on in the 80s, that in some ways parallels what we saw with Wakefield and the MMR autism myth, where kind of some initial findings or some reports were blown out of proportion by one particularly sensational media show. And so you had some of that going on, but I think there's a big combination of, in the late 90s, of the fact that a reasonably at the time respected researcher published in a very respected journal, and the rise of the internet and whatnot that allowed now we're starting to see how bad information can get around quickly and undermine good information from physicians, whereas in the 80s you might have heard something or read something, or maybe you caught the show, but then you talk to your doctor and your doctor's like, okay, here are the facts. I think that's a little bit more difficult now that you can get into groups and forums, and now we got social media that allows for echo chambers to concentrate that. And so I think we're seeing that in lots of areas of the world right now, not just with vaccines and not just with science, but with a lot of echo chambers echoing false facts, right? And
this is going to be a long episode.
Yes, we'll try not to. I'll just steer it back to vaccines. So tell me, in the conference that you went to, Chad, you did you see Andrew Wakefield speaking? What other vaccine specific stuff did you see at your conference that we can discuss?
Vaccines specifically, they didn't come up a whole lot because it was mostly targeted at the older audience. Most of the people there were probably mid 40s to mid 60s ish, and a lot of it was about detecting cancer early and finding cancer that isn't there and doing cleanses and detoxes and stuff. So it wasn't pediatric focused, but there was one. He's similarly used to be a doctor, but no longer has a license, who organized the show, the conference, and it was a show.
Yeah.
But he did a lot of autism, air quotes, treatments, and he mentioned several times that vaccines could cause cancer and that they should be avoided, and they could cause autism and a bunch of other things. Andrew Wakefield was the only one that specifically focused on them, and even that was pretty limited. He apparently didn't know he was going to speak at the conference. I think he thought he was there just for the gala that honored him and several other people who have contributed to the downfall of modern medicine. And but he got up on the stage and kind of stumbled around for a little bit, and he talked about the next mass extinction, and it's upon us. It's about to happen right now.
Is it scheduled?
Whoa.
He didn't give a specific time. Okay. I think he might have learned something from prophets about.
I think he learned something from the X-Files.
Not giving a date.
Yeah, the X-Files had a date, and then it never happened. So maybe that's.
But he mentioned that this next mass extinction is going to become an issue for two reasons. One is autism, in which he made the illogical and quite offensive leap of suggesting that autistic people cannot reproduce. And
oh my goodness!
He's off the deep end even more than I realized.
Right. Well, he seems to continue to go downhill.
Jesus.
I think you have to keep getting more extreme to keep getting more followers in that arena. But he said the autism rates are going up. He did this weird extrapolation thing where, because the rates are going up due to recategorization and increased awareness and that kind of thing, 20, 30, 40, whatever years from now, we'll all be autistic. And then suggested that, because the most severe cases of children with autism will likely not go on to have relationships and procreate, that everyone with autism spectrum disorder is in that same boat, which is far from true.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go.
I was just going to say, you're sitting there listening to this, right? Did you look around and see, were people eating this up when he was saying this, or did people look horrified? I would be horrified listeing to that.
There were very few horrified. Depending on the speaker, there were varying levels of interest, but for the most part, they loved it all.